Since the beginning of human civilization, people have been captivated by the search for answers to the most profound and universal questions. Where do we come from? What is the purpose of life? And what happens after we die? These timeless inquiries have sparked countless debates, investigations, and speculations throughout history. Amidst this thirst for understanding, there have been reports of an ancient, almost mythical group of spiritual masters who held profound secrets about the nature of existence, the universe, and the soul itself. These masters, often referred to as the Seven Sages, were thought to be the guardians of knowledge so old it predated civilization as we know it. But who exactly were these sages? And could one of the most iconic figures in religious history, Jesus Christ, have been initiated into their mysteries? Much is unknown about the so-called lost years of Jesus, those years that remain unaccounted for in the biblical narrative. From his childhood until the time he began his public ministry, this enigmatic period, spanning from the age of 12 to 30, raises many intriguing questions. What did Jesus do during these years? Where did he go, and whom did he meet along the way? Some scholars suggest that Jesus may have traveled to distant lands such as Egypt, Persia, or even India, seeking spiritual wisdom and instruction from some of the highest spiritual circles of the time. But what if, during these years, Jesus was guided by a lineage of spiritual masters who preserved a long-lost wisdom? One that could reveal the deeper truths of existence? The Seven Sages, known by different names in various cultures, have always been associated with the idea of divine light, a transcendent knowledge that can unlock the true nature of reality. In Sumerian tradition, they are known as the Abalu, sent by the gods to impart divine knowledge to humanity. In ancient Egypt, their wisdom echoes in the teachings of Thoth, the divine scribe. In Persia, they are seen as the guardians of the sacred flame, whose teachings helped shape Zoroastrian philosophy. And in Greek tradition, the Seven Sages were celebrated as philosophers and lawmakers who influenced the foundations of Western thought. But is there a deeper connection between these various representations of wisdom? Could it be that the Seven Sages were different manifestations of the same hidden order, an ancient and unbroken spiritual lineage, spanning millennia, transmitting its profound knowledge only to the most worthy initiates? The idea of secret spiritual lineages, passed down through generations and hidden from the general public, is not a new one. Throughout history, there have been records of esoteric societies dedicated to preserving knowledge about the soul, the nature of reality, and the mysteries of creation. These traditions kept certain secrets that were deemed too sacred or dangerous for the uninitiated, such as the power of the spoken word, the energy of light, and the human potential to transcend the material world. The very concept of divine light appears in nearly all ancient religions. In Egypt, it was embodied in the principle of life emanating from Ra. In Zoroastrianism, it was represented as the essence of the god Ahura Mazda. And in Christianity, Christ himself is referred to as the light of the world. But is this light merely a symbolic metaphor? Or is there a deeper, hidden truth behind it? If Jesus was indeed initiated into the mysteries of this ancient order, could his teachings carry profound esoteric messages? Messages that were intended to be understood only by those who had eyes to see and ears to hear. Many of Jesus's words suggest that his teachings contained hidden layers of meaning, transcending simple moral lessons. For instance, when he says, "The kingdom of God is within you," could this be a direct reference to a secret teaching about the divine nature of the human being? Some scholars believe that the first Christians held a radically different view of Jesus than what became the dominant narrative. For many of them, Jesus was not merely a moral teacher or a divine figure separated from humanity. Instead, he was an initiate, someone who underwent a profound inner transformation, reaching a state of spiritual enlightenment. This view of Jesus is reflected in the Gnostic texts, where Christ is described as the one who came to bring true knowledge, freeing humanity from the illusions of the material world. The apocryphal Gospels, such as the Gospel of Thomas, reinforce this idea, offering teachings that closely resemble the esoteric principles found in ancient mystery schools. But if Jesus's teachings were indeed tied to this deeper spiritual knowledge, why have they been hidden for so long? Why has the dominant Christian tradition largely ignored or rejected the possible connection between Jesus and the initiatory orders of the past? Some believe that the answer lies in the Church's desire to maintain political and religious control. By presenting Jesus as a divine being who is separate from humanity, the Church could consolidate its authority and create an unassailable hierarchy. However, if Jesus were an initiate who sought to teach people the path to awakening the divine light within themselves, this could undermine the power structures of the Church and the established religious order. To explore these questions further, we must look at historical records, apocryphal writings, and cross-cultural accounts that have survived through the ages. The parallels between the teachings of Jesus and those of the seven sages are striking. And this raises the question, could there be an unbroken line of knowledge that connects the great spiritual traditions of antiquity to the message of Christ? And more importantly, what is the true meaning behind the concept of divine light, which appears in almost all of these traditions? We are just beginning to unravel these mysteries. In the next phase of this exploration, we will delve into the lost years of Jesus' life and examine the evidence that he may have sought spiritual training in distant lands before beginning his public mission. What secrets were taught to him during this time? Who were his teachers? What was the purpose of his quest for knowledge? And how did it shape the mission he would later undertake? The story of Jesus is one of the most well-known and studied in the world. Yet there is a vast and unexplored gap in his life, the so-called lost years. From the time he was 12 until he began his ministry at around the age of 30. The canonical Gospels remain silent on his activities. This mysterious gap in his life invites countless questions. What could have happened during these years? Where did Jesus go, and what did he experience? Could Jesus have traveled to distant lands, absorbing the spiritual wisdom and mysteries of divine light preserved in ancient centers of learning? Some reports suggest that he may have ventured to Egypt, Persia, India, and even Tibet, learning from spiritual masters and initiates who had access to the secret teachings of the divine. But how much of this is mere speculation, and how much can be substantiated with evidence? The first point to consider is the political and cultural context of Palestine during the 1st century. At that time, the region was a melting pot of various influences. The Roman Empire ruled over the land, but Greek thought, inherited from the Hellenistic era, still had a profound influence on philosophy and spirituality. Palestine also had strong cultural and intellectual connections with Egypt and Persia. Jewish communities often traveled to Alexandria, which was a vibrant center of learning. Could it be that, as a young man, Jesus sought spiritual knowledge amidst these rich and diverse intellectual traditions? The relationship between Jesus and Egypt has long been a subject of interest among scholars. The Gospel of Matthew mentions that Joseph, Mary, and the young Jesus fled to Egypt to escape the wrath of King Herod. If this event truly took place, how long did they stay in Egypt, and what might Jesus have encountered during his time there? Could this journey have been part of his broader quest for spiritual wisdom? Did it serve as a formative experience, shaping the teachings that he would later share with the world? As we continue to explore the mysterious gap in Jesus' life, the quest to uncover the hidden knowledge that may have shaped his teachings only deepens. Could the lost years of Jesus be the key to understanding his true message and his connection to ancient spiritual traditions? The answers may lie in the rich history of secret societies, ancient wisdom, and the mystical teachings of the seven sages, who may have played a crucial role in shaping not only Jesus' mission but also the very foundation of spiritual knowledge that transcends time and culture. Could it be possible that, during his youth, Jesus returned to Egypt to delve deeper into the ancient mysteries of spirituality? Egypt, known as one of the foremost centers of esoteric knowledge in the ancient world, housed temples that were not only sites of worship but also institutions where the deepest secrets of existence, the soul, and the divine were preserved. These temples were devoted to the study of Hermes, the god of knowledge and wisdom, and many spiritual figures throughout history have undergone initiation in these sacred spaces. For instance, Moses, an iconic figure in religious history, is believed to have been educated within the rich traditions of Egypt before he emerged as the spiritual leader of the Hebrew people. Could it be that Jesus, too, followed a similar path of initiation in Egypt's spiritual centers, learning the profound secrets that would later shape his mission? This connection between Jesus and Egypt brings us to a fascinating consideration. Did Jesus undergo a journey of enlightenment? one that involved studying ancient esoteric traditions to unlock deeper truths about the nature of the universe and the soul? Moreover, there is another point that should not be overlooked: Jesus' potential connection to Persia and Zoroastrianism. The ancient Persian religion, Zoroastrianism, which dates back thousands of years, preached the notion of divine light, a radiant energy that permeates the universe and illuminates those who walk the righteous path. In this tradition, the supreme deity, Ahura Mazda, was seen as the ultimate source of this divine light, and his teachings spoke about the eternal struggle between the forces of light and darkness. An ideology that closely parallels Jesus' own teachings about good and evil, light and dark. The gospel narratives themselves provide clues about the connection between Jesus and this ancient tradition. For instance, the Magi, mysterious figures from the East, are said to have visited Jesus at the time of his birth, bearing gifts. But who exactly were these Magi? Some scholars speculate that they were Zoroastrian priests, members of an ancient initiatory tradition, who had already prophesied the arrival of a great master of light. If this theory holds true, then the connection between Jesus and Persian esoteric teachings could be much deeper and more intricate than previously imagined. But what if Jesus' journey for spiritual knowledge took him even further beyond Egypt and Persia? Could it be that he traveled to India and Tibet, seeking wisdom from Eastern spiritual traditions? There are accounts that suggest Jesus may have visited these distant lands, where Buddhist and other Eastern spiritual practices had flourished for centuries. In fact, explorers in the 19th century uncovered texts that describe a figure named Isa, a master from the West who traveled to India to study and share wisdom. This figure, said to embody universal love and compassion, two central values in both Buddhist teachings and the teachings of Christ, raises the question of whether Jesus could have studied among the great spiritual masters of India. Did he absorb concepts about the nature of the soul, enlightenment, and the path to self-realization that are so closely tied to Eastern philosophy? If we examine the teachings of Jesus closely, particularly his words in the Gospels, we begin to see striking parallels with Eastern wisdom. For example, the concept of material detachment, the encouragement of meditation, and the emphasis on compassion, all pillars of Buddhism and many other Eastern traditions, are also foundational aspects of Jesus' own teachings. Furthermore, the idea that the kingdom of God is within you resonates deeply with Vedantic philosophy, which teaches that the divine resides within every human being, waiting to be realized. Could these similarities be mere coincidences? Or do they suggest a deeper, more profound connection between Jesus and the spiritual teachings of the East? Another critical source of information comes from the Gnostic texts, the apocryphal Gospels that were excluded from the official Bible. In texts like the Gospel of Thomas, we find a Jesus who is portrayed not just as a teacher of moral lessons, but as a guide for internal transformation. His words in these texts are introspective, encouraging individuals to look within themselves for enlightenment. This approach to teaching, focused on self-knowledge and personal spiritual awakening, is characteristic of initiatory traditions, where the master doesn't just teach, they guide their disciples through a process of deep internal change. If Jesus did undergo an initiatory journey, receiving teachings in secret, it's likely that these lessons were later transmitted to his followers in a veiled manner, accessible only to those who were prepared to understand their true meaning. If this is indeed the case, one of the most important questions arises: why has this knowledge remained largely hidden? Why is it not widely recognized that Jesus may have been an initiate of Eastern and Egyptian spiritual traditions? The answer to this question may lie in the development of Christianity itself in the first few centuries following Jesus' death. After his passing, there was a concerted effort to consolidate a single, official doctrine. This effort aimed to create a unified narrative about Jesus, one that emphasized his divinity and separated him from the everyday human experience. The idea that Jesus was not merely a divine figure but also an initiate who underwent a spiritual journey of transformation could be seen as a threat to the power and authority of the early church. Thus, much of the knowledge of his personal spiritual growth and initiation may have been suppressed or forgotten. What we do know for certain is that when Jesus returned to Palestine to begin his public ministry, he was a completely transformed figure. His words carried a power and depth that suggest a journey of great spiritual learning. The profound nature of his teachings, which emphasized inner transformation, suggests that his spiritual formation may have been far broader than many traditional accounts recognize. There is compelling evidence to suggest that his journey was linked to ancient traditions that date back to the 7 sages and the concept of divine light. In the next phase of this exploration, we will dive deeper into the mystery of the 7 sages and the sacred teachings of Egypt, examining how Egyptian wisdom influenced the spiritual thought of the time, what secrets were preserved in the temples of Egypt, and how did they shape the spiritual landscape of the ancient world. Egypt has always been a hub for esoteric knowledge, with its temples serving as universities for the soul, places where priests and initiates delved into the mysteries of creation, life, death, and the soul's journey. Among the oldest traditions in Egypt was the belief that certain masters held supreme wisdom, a knowledge passed down only to those who demonstrated purity of intention and a deep longing for enlightenment. These masters were often considered guardians of the divine light, the cosmic knowledge that was thought to connect the human soul with the divine realm. Could these ancient masters be the same 7 sages who appear in various traditions around the world? And could Jesus have been initiated into their mysteries, absorbing this profound wisdom during his time in Egypt? To understand this possibility, we must delve into the Egyptian initiatory traditions, which were carefully guarded and only accessible to those deemed worthy. These ancient spiritual practices involved rigorous testing of one's purity and commitment to enlightenment. The Egyptian priests believed that the truth of the universe could not be revealed to just anyone, as those who were unprepared could distort or misuse this sacred knowledge. Only the most pure-hearted and devoted initiates were granted access to the teachings of the divine light. The god Thoth, also known as Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great, was regarded as the keeper of this cosmic knowledge, and his teachings laid the foundation for many esoteric systems. Thoth was said to have revealed the secrets of writing, magic, and alchemy, all of which focused on spiritual transformation and the connection between humanity and the divine. The principles outlined in the Corpus Hermeticum, a collection of Egyptian mystical writings, echo many of the teachings found in the Gospels. The famous maxim, as above, so below, reflects the idea of unity between God and man, a central tenet in esoteric Christianity. If Jesus indeed traveled to Egypt during his early years, it's possible he studied in these sacred temples and was initiated into the mysteries of the divine light. Alexandria, which at the time was one of the most important intellectual centers in the world, was a fusion of Egyptian, Greek, Jewish, and Oriental philosophies. The city's thriving intellectual environment would have been the perfect place for a young Jesus to encounter esoteric teachings that would later shape his ministry. Furthermore, the connection between Egyptian initiation and Christian symbolism is undeniable. In ancient Egypt, initiation rituals often involved a symbolic death and spiritual rebirth, a process similar to Christian baptism, and even to Christ's own crucifixion and resurrection. In the mysteries of Osiris, for example, the initiate underwent a journey where they faced challenges that represented the purification of the soul. In the end, they emerged reborn, transformed and enlightened by divine wisdom. Could Jesus have undergone a similar process of spiritual purification before beginning his public mission? The Christian tradition mentions Jesus' early contact with Egypt. According to the Gospel of Matthew, Joseph and Mary fled there with the infant Jesus to escape King Herod's persecution. If this event truly occurred, what might have happened next? Could Jesus have returned to Egypt in search of deeper wisdom? There are theories suggesting that, during his time in Egypt, Jesus might have studied with Egyptian priests, learning about the inner light and the true purpose of existence. Some researchers have pointed out that the teachings of Jesus, particularly those found in the Gnostic Gospels, bear a striking resemblance to Hermetic principles and Egyptian mysteries. The ancient Egyptians spoke of the power of the verb, the idea that the spoken word could create and transform reality. This principle aligns closely with the Christian concept of the Logos, the living Word of God. The Egyptian priests taught that the vibration of sound could alter consciousness and connect the human soul to the divine, a practice reflected in the use of mantra in Eastern traditions. And in Christian prayers, this knowledge could have been part of what Jesus learned during his initiatory journey in Egypt. Light, in Egyptian teachings, was a powerful symbol associated with wisdom and divinity. The pharaohs were considered children of the light, chosen by the gods to bring knowledge to the people. In the Gospels, Jesus speaks frequently of light, declaring himself to be the light of the world. Could this connection between light and divine knowledge be rooted in the ancient Egyptian spiritual traditions that shaped Jesus' teachings? The search for these hidden connections continues to shed new light on the spiritual journey of Jesus and the profound wisdom that he may have absorbed during his early years. The concept of light as a divine, transcendent principle is central to many ancient spiritual traditions, including those of Egypt, Persia, and even the teachings of Jesus himself. One of the most profound declarations made by Jesus in the Gospel of John is, "Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness but will have the light of life." This statement underscores a deep, universal truth that has echoed through various cultures, symbolizing the divine wisdom that guides and illuminates the soul. This idea of light transcends mere symbolism in the Egyptian traditions, the teachings of the seven sages, and even in the profound words of Jesus. It represents a force of spiritual illumination that touches the essence of life and existence itself. But why, then, has this profound knowledge remained hidden, especially if Jesus was indeed initiated into the Egyptian mysteries? Why is this vital aspect of his spiritual journey so often overlooked in traditional Christian narratives? To answer this, we must look to the history of how institutionalized Christianity was formed in the centuries following Jesus' death. In the early years of the Church, there were many currents of Christian thought, some of which were heavily influenced by Gnosticism and Hermetic teachings, philosophies deeply rooted in mystical knowledge, divine illumination, and the path to spiritual awakening. However, as the Church consolidated its power and influence, these alternative traditions, with their esoteric interpretations, were deemed heretical and systematically suppressed. This move to standardize Christian beliefs under one dogmatic umbrella resulted in the gradual erasure of the idea that Jesus was not merely a divine figure but also an initiate, someone who underwent spiritual growth, much like the ancient mystics before him. Yet, despite this systematic attempt to bury the truth, traces of these esoteric teachings can still be found in the Gnostic texts, which offer a radically different portrayal of Jesus. In the Gospel of Thomas, for example, Jesus says, "Whoever seeks, let them not stop seeking until they find. When they find, they will be disturbed, and when they are disturbed, they will marvel and reign over all." This kind of language mirrors the teachings of ancient Egyptian initiates, who underwent purification processes and reached enlightenment through their spiritual trials. When we start connecting these dots, we uncover a much larger picture. The seven sages, who have guarded ancient knowledge for millennia, might have played a key role in preserving and transmitting this sacred wisdom. And if Jesus had access to this knowledge, his mission might have been about far more than just moral teachings. Instead, his purpose may have been to revive and share an ancient spiritual tradition, bringing to light wisdom that had been forgotten or hidden from the general populace. Yet, as we explore this deeper narrative, another question arises. Who else might have passed this sacred knowledge to Jesus? Could there be another, possibly even more significant, spiritual tradition that prepared him for his mission? To explore this further, we must turn our attention to the enigmatic presence of the Magi from the East, the priests of ancient Persia. These figures have long intrigued scholars and historians, particularly regarding their visit to honor the birth of Jesus in Bethlehem. The Bible describes the three Magi bringing gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. But Eastern traditions offer a far more detailed account of these figures. In these traditions, the Magi are not merely wise men but are seen as priests, astronomers, and keepers of ancient, spiritual knowledge. Could it be that these Magi recognized in Jesus a continuation of an ancient spiritual lineage? And if so, could Jesus have been initiated into their mysteries? To fully understand this connection, we need to examine the ancient Persian tradition of Zoroastrianism, one of the oldest religions in the world. Zoroastrianism, founded by the prophet Zoroaster, also known as Zarathustra, is built upon the fundamental idea of a cosmic struggle between the forces of light and darkness. At the center of this belief is Ahura Mazda, the supreme god of light, who guides the righteous toward the truth. For the Zoroastrian priests, known as the Magi, light was not merely a symbol, it was a real and divine force, one that pervades the universe and can be accessed through wisdom, purity, and spiritual enlightenment. The concept of light in Zoroastrianism closely mirrors the teachings of Jesus, who also declared, "I am the light of the world." This alignment between the Magi's understanding of light as a divine force and Jesus's words further suggests a profound connection between the two. Additionally, the Magi were known for their purification rituals, many of which involved fire, a practice that bears a striking resemblance to the Christian sacrament of baptism, a ritual of spiritual purification and renewal. The Zoroastrian tradition also speaks of a coming Messiah, one who would restore order to the world and overcome the forces of evil. Could the Magi, in their wisdom, have recognized Jesus as the fulfillment of this prophecy? Furthermore, the Zoroastrians were keepers of secret knowledge that was passed down only to those who had undergone rigorous spiritual training. According to ancient texts, the Magi possessed a deep understanding of astrology, alchemy, and the cosmic cycles that govern human destiny. This wealth of knowledge would have made the Magi key figures in Jesus's potential spiritual journey. If the Magi did, in fact, recognize Jesus as the future bearer of divine knowledge, it raises the question, did Jesus, during his lost years, travel to Persia to learn from these wise sages? The route between Palestine and Persia during the time of Jesus was well established, and many wise men from all parts of the ancient world traveled to Persia to study in the initiatory schools of the region. The Magi were known to accept foreign disciples who demonstrated exceptional spiritual understanding. If Jesus was one of these disciples, what teachings might he have absorbed during his time with the Magi? One of the key teachings of Zoroastrianism was the belief that every human being possesses a divine spark, a fragment of Ahura Mazda's supreme light, that guides them toward truth and salvation. This principle aligns closely with Jesus's teaching that the kingdom of God is within you, a message that underscores the divine potential within each person. Additionally, Zoroastrians believed that the universe followed a divine plan, and those who understood this plan could align themselves with God's will and manifest true wisdom. This resonates strongly with Jesus's message about living according to the will of the Heavenly Father. The idea of the Son of Light, found both in Zoroastrianism and Christianity, along with various esoteric and Gnostic traditions, may have its roots in the ancient Persian belief that light was the essence of the human soul and the divine connection that transcends the material world. As we dig deeper into the relationship between the Magi and the seven sages, we uncover another fascinating layer. Ancient records suggest that the Persian Magi were connected to an even older tradition, one that transcended Zoroastrianism itself. This tradition speaks of a group of spiritual masters, the seven sages, who have guided humanity at critical junctures throughout history. Some texts refer to these sages as enlightened beings who protect the secrets of creation. Are these the same seven sages mentioned in Egyptian, Sumerian, and Greek traditions? And if so, could Jesus have been recognized by these sages as a worthy successor of this ancient lineage? One intriguing connection between the Magi and Jewish mysticism is their potential influence on the Essenes, a mystical Jewish community dedicated to the study of light, spiritual purification, and enlightenment. Many scholars believe that Jesus may have had contact with the Essenes before beginning his public ministry, as his teachings on purity, love, and inner enlightenment align closely with those of the Essene tradition. If the Essenes were influenced by the Magi, it would mean that Jesus may have indirectly absorbed the knowledge of the Magi, adding another layer of depth to his teachings. However, if Jesus was indeed initiated into the mysteries of divine light by the Magi, why is this connection so often ignored or erased from the official history of Christianity? The answer may lie in the transformation of Christianity into an institutionalized religion in the first few centuries after Jesus' death. The Church, in its efforts to consolidate power, sought to create a clear and unified doctrine that would serve its authority. Any suggestion that Jesus was part of an initiatory tradition, or that he underwent spiritual growth, might have undermined the Church's claim to absolute spiritual authority. Consequently, much of the esoteric knowledge that could have pointed to his initiation was gradually removed from the official records. Despite this, echoes of this hidden knowledge can still be found today. Many modern esoteric orders claim to preserve the teachings of the seven sages and the Magi, preserving secret spiritual wisdom passed down through generations. Manuscripts like the Gnostic Gospels and the Dead Sea Scrolls have resurfaced in the last few centuries, strengthening the idea that hidden knowledge, once accessible only to the initiated, has survived and continues to inform our understanding of Jesus' message. The central question that arises from this exploration is whether Jesus' mission was purely to bring a new religion, or if it was part of a much larger plan to revive and preserve humanity's sacred knowledge. If he was indeed trained by ancient spiritual masters, his life and teachings may be far more complex and multifaceted than traditional accounts suggest. The challenge, then, is to uncover these hidden truths and understand how they might have shaped Jesus' role as a teacher, healer, and spiritual guide. What happens when such deep and transformative knowledge is threatened? How did the forces that controlled the world react to a master who held the key to true spiritual liberation? As we continue this investigation, the answers may lie in exploring the relationship between Jesus and the mysteries of Greek philosophy, how his teachings might have bridged Eastern wisdom and Western thought. Could Jesus have absorbed the profound teachings of Plato, Pythagoras, and other ancient sages, incorporating their wisdom into his own understanding of the universe and the divine? The next phase of this exploration promises to shed light on these questions, potentially revealing Jesus as the missing link between Eastern and Western spiritual traditions. To fully comprehend the possibility that Jesus may have absorbed knowledge from Greek philosophy and mystery schools, we must first consider the broader historical context of the first century. During this time, Greek thought held a dominant influence across much of the known world. Despite the political control of the Roman Empire, the intellectual legacies of great Greek philosophers like Plato and Aristotle had a profound effect on the cultural and philosophical landscapes, shaping much of the thinking of the era. Many Jewish intellectuals were deeply immersed in this intellectual universe, exploring the intersection of Greek philosophy with their own traditions. A key figure during this period was Philo of Alexandria, a Jewish philosopher who sought to harmonize Platonic philosophy with Jewish faith. Philo's ideas provided a fertile ground for new spiritual perspectives and ideas that would later resonate with the teachings of Jesus. However, the connection between Jesus and Greek philosophy likely extends beyond the merging of Jewish thought with Greek influences, a fusion known as Judeo-Hellenism. If Jesus truly embarked on a journey to deepen his understanding of divine truths during his lost years, it is entirely possible that he passed through various learning centers linked to the ancient Greek mystery schools. These schools, such as the Eleusinian and Orphic mysteries, held teachings that delved into the nature of the soul, the afterlife, and the path to spiritual awakening. In these schools, initiates underwent purification processes, each step preparing them to receive the final, transformative revelation, the light of divine understanding. The parallels with Jesus' teachings are unmistakable. Much like the initiates of these Greek traditions, Jesus himself imparted profound wisdom about spiritual transformation, emphasizing inner sanctity and enlightenment. One particularly striking connection between Greek philosophy and the teachings of Jesus can be found in the teachings of Pythagoras, one of the foremost esoteric philosophers of ancient Greece. Pythagoras introduced the belief in the transmigration of the soul, a doctrine that suggested the soul undergoes a cycle of rebirths, learning and evolving toward spiritual perfection. This idea ties directly to Jesus' teachings about the importance of purification and spiritual awakening. Jesus repeatedly emphasized the need for inner transformation before reaching spiritual enlightenment, a notion that resonates deeply with Pythagoras' belief in the necessity of spiritual purification. Additionally, Pythagoras taught that the universe is governed by divine harmony, an order that unites all beings through a cosmic intelligence. This principle of harmony within the cosmos mirrors the teachings of Jesus, who also emphasized the importance of love and unity among human beings. The concept of harmony within the universe as expressed by Pythagoras was not limited to the physical realm but extended to the soul's connection with the divine. This is strikingly similar to Jesus' message about the inherent connection between humanity and the divine, a theme that runs throughout the Gospels. Another fascinating connection lies in the concept of the logos, a term that appears both in Greek philosophy and early Christian thought. The Greek philosopher Heraclitus first coined the term logos to describe the divine order that governs the universe, the supreme intelligence behind all of existence. This idea was further developed by Plato and the Stoics, who saw the logos as the divine mind that permeates all creation, giving structure and meaning to everything. In the Gospel of John, the concept of the logos is explicitly referenced. In the beginning was the logos, and the logos was with God, and the logos was God. This verse clearly establishes a connection between Jesus and the logos, showing that early Christians saw him as the living embodiment of this divine principle, a concept deeply rooted in Greek thought. If Jesus truly came into contact with these Greek philosophical ideas, his mission might have been far more complex than simply introducing a new religion. Instead of merely breaking away from Judaism or establishing a new doctrinal framework, Jesus could have aimed to unify the great spiritual traditions of humanity. Weaving together the wisdom of Eastern and Western thought, his teachings might have been an attempt to bring together the profound spiritual truths that transcended cultural and religious boundaries. Moreover, the relationship between Jesus and Greek philosophy is also evident in the way he taught. Just as Socrates used parables and questions to guide his disciples toward deeper understanding, Jesus also frequently used parables to provoke thought and reflection. Both Socrates and Jesus rejected dogmatic answers and encouraged an inner search for truth, believing that true wisdom cannot be simply handed down but must be personally discovered. This approach was deeply rooted in the Greek philosophical tradition, where knowledge was seen as something to be actively sought and personally experienced. Like Socrates, who challenged the authority of the powerful figures of his time and was condemned for it, Jesus also questioned the religious and political authorities of his day, leading to his crucifixion. However, if Jesus had been influenced by these initiatory traditions, why has this aspect of his life and teachings been obscured or lost? One plausible explanation is that, as Christianity evolved into an institutionalized religion, there was a concerted effort to distance Jesus from any external influences. The early church, in its bid to solidify a unified theological framework, wanted Jesus to be seen as unique and divinely distinct from all other spiritual traditions. The idea that he might have learned from other esoteric schools of thought could have undermined the Church's efforts to consolidate its authority. Thus, any connection to the Greek mystery schools or other mystical traditions was suppressed, and the image of Jesus as a self-sufficient, independent teacher was firmly established. Despite these efforts to erase the esoteric influences from Jesus's legacy, fragments of this wisdom have survived in various texts. The Gnostic Gospels, for example, present a view of Jesus that emphasizes inner enlightenment and self-discovery, ideas that echo Platonic and Pythagorean thought. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus's teachings focus on the pursuit of personal knowledge and awakening, with the idea that true wisdom comes from within. This perspective aligns closely with the teachings of the ancient Greek philosophers, who emphasized the importance of personal reflection and inner transformation as the path to divine wisdom. The early Christian Gnostic communities, who preserved this esoteric tradition, viewed Christ not just as a religious figure, but as a master of cosmic wisdom, an initiate who had unlocked the deepest mysteries of existence. They saw him as someone who had been initiated into the divine secrets of the universe. Much like the sages of ancient spiritual traditions, this interpretation of Christ challenges the conventional understanding of Jesus as merely a moral teacher and reveals a more complex, layered spiritual figure. If this was indeed Jesus's true mission, to reveal the nature of humanity and its connection to the divine light, then his teachings might have been distorted over time. What was once a profound and transformative message may have been transformed into dogma, serving to solidify the power of religious institutions rather than liberate the individual soul. This brings us to the Essenes, a secretive Jewish community that lived in the desert and preserved teachings about light, purification, and the coming of the Messiah. Many believe that Jesus may have spent part of his early life among the Essenes, absorbing their teachings and preparing for his public mission. The Essenes were known for their rigorous spiritual practices, which included purification rituals, fasting, and deep meditation. Their teachings about the inner light and the path to enlightenment may have deeply influenced Jesus' own understanding of spirituality, providing him with the tools he would later use in his ministry. 5147. Spirituality itself. During the Renaissance, for example, there was a resurgence of interest in Hermetic, alchemical, and esoteric teachings, many of which had strong connections to the principles of divine light. Philosophers like Giordano Bruno Paracelsus and Isaac Newton were deeply involved with the study of occultism and the invisible laws of the universe. This indicates that esoteric knowledge never completely disappeared, it simply took on different forms throughout history. Today, in the 21st century, we are experiencing a new spiritual awakening. 5225. More and more people are seeking answers outside of traditional religious structures, turning to Eastern philosophies, meditation practices, and studies on consciousness and energy. Are we approaching a new cycle where divine light will be fully understood? If Jesus truly came to reveal this knowledge, then perhaps his original message is just waiting for the right moment to be rediscovered. But this leads us to the last and perhaps most important question: if this knowledge has always existed and has been passed down throughout history. 5259. What is its true purpose? Is it merely a philosophical pursuit, or is there something much deeper at stake? In the next part, we will explore the great mystery, Jesus and the secret tradition of the initiates, examining whether he was part of a larger plan for the spiritual evolution of humanity and what that means for us today. If we analyze all the evidence throughout history, it becomes clear that Jesus was not just a preacher, a religious leader. He may have been the bearer of ancient knowledge passed down by a secret lineage of spiritual masters. 5337. This tradition, which dates back to the 7 sages, may have passed through Egypt, Persia, Greece, and the Azes before reaching him. But if this is true, the essential question arises: what was the purpose of this tradition? What was Jesus' true mission? The sacred text suggests that Jesus came into the world to bring the divine light, not in the metaphorical sense of a new religion, but rather as a real awakening of human consciousness. In several passages of the Gospels, he speaks about a hidden knowledge reserved only for those who 5413 are prepared. In Mark 4:11, he says, "Unto you it is given to know the mystery of the kingdom of God, but unto them that are without all these things are done in parables." This statement suggests that there was a deeper teaching accessible only to a select group of initiates. If Jesus was trained within this secret tradition, his mission may have been to bring back a lost wisdom, offering humanity a path to true spiritual liberation. But what exactly did this liberation mean? According to some esoteric currents, the divine light is not just a symbolic 5452 concept. It is a real force and energy that can transform the human being and connect him to the divine. This knowledge has been preserved in different traditions throughout history, from the rituals of Egypt to the Eastern practices of meditation and enlightenment. But if Jesus' mission was to restore this knowledge, why was he rejected? The answer may lie in the fact that his message posed a direct threat to the power of the time. The Roman Empire and Jewish religious leaders were deeply rooted in control systems, and a 5526 master who preached that the kingdom of God was within everyone was a direct threat to these institutions. If people understood that they didn't need intermediaries to connect with the divine, the entire authority system would collapse. This may be the reason why your true message has been distorted over the centuries. Christianity, in its institutionalized form, emphasized the worship of Jesus as a divine being but erased the initiatory aspects of his teachings, which suggested that anyone could achieve this same state of 5559 enlightenment. This explains why the Gnostic Gospels were considered heretical and why esoteric traditions that spoke about the true nature of the human being were systematically suppressed. But if your original message was hidden, can it still be recovered? The answer may lie in the traditions that have preserved elements of this knowledge throughout history. As we have seen, the Gnostics, the Templars, the Rosicrucians, and other mystical orders seem to have carried fragments of this wisdom. But more than that, modern 5633 science itself is beginning to reveal aspects of this truth that were previously hidden. Studies on consciousness, energy, and quantum physics indicate that reality may be much more fluid and interconnected than we imagine, something that spiritual traditions have been teaching for millennia. Does this mean that we are approaching a new spiritual awakening? If Jesus came to restore lost knowledge, perhaps his mission has not yet been completed. Maybe he planted a seed that is only now, 2,000 years later, beginning to bloom. The growing interest in 5711 spirituality, self-knowledge, and consciousness expansion may be a sign that humanity is finally ready to understand the true message he tried to convey. But this leads us to a final question: if the divine light truly exists and can be accessed, how can we find it? Jesus said, "Seek and you shall find, knock and it will be opened unto you." This suggests that the pursuit of truth is an individual journey, something that each person must tread on their own. What he brought was not dogma, but rather a key, and it's up to each one to decide. 5749 Whether they want to use it, perhaps in the end the real secret of Jesus is not lost, it has always been within us. The question is, are we ready to awaken mind unfettered? Now I want to hear from you. If Jesus truly was initiated into a secret tradition, what does this mean for your spiritual journey? Do you believe his true message has been concealed over the centuries? Comment below what the most powerful insight you gained from this video was. Remember, the demonstration becomes stronger when we share our discoveries, so write in the comments. 5830. What this truth has awakened in you. We are co-creating this search together, and if you think we've already unraveled everything, wait until you watch the next video on your screen now. In it we're going to explore one of the biggest hidden mysteries in history, the forbidden secret of the Vatican, hidden truth about Jesus. Are you ready to uncover what has been deliberately hidden for centuries? Then click now and come with me to reveal this truth. Blast off. If you're not yet a part of the Mind Unfettered family, sign up now to 5907. Continue this journey of enlightenment and expansion. See you in the next video. The truth is closer than ever. Music.